Well, we're over in one of our fields this afternoon, and we're going to lift some of these daffodils, which in previous years have been doing quite well, but you can see these have been eaten when they were younger and emerging from the soil in the early season. But these also had the misfortune of being trimmed last year before they'd completely died down, and as a consequence these bulbs really aren't thriving here. Now, with a bit of care and some feed, we can dig these up. They've been growing here probably for 40 or 50 years. They're going to be well concentrated, probably overgrown clumps, and they'll really benefit from being divided. But equally we're going to move them to a position in the garden where they're not going to be trimmed or eaten by the livestock, and plant these out so that next year hopefully these will resume flowering. So let's get some spades in, start digging some clumps up and see what these bulbs are looking like under the surface. Okay, well, we've gone all the way around this bulb clump. If I just oyster this open, what we don't want to take is any of this nettle root or the grass over, but just look, these are lovely bulbs, really nicely grown. They're really quite compacted together, and a lot of them very close to the surface. So one of the problems why these may not be flowering too well, combination of trimming last year, growing too close to the surface, which tends to promote small bulbs that divide very rapidly, but also these are really compacted clumps now, and they're really going to benefit from us getting these open, dividing them up and planting them, giving them some more space and some fresh compost and a good feed. Well, these are the bulbs now completely bare rooted. What we've done is shake off any of the root that we don't want to transplant with these, and you'll see we've got a complete mixture of bulbs, from some really nice good sized ones like this one, which should really flower well next year, right the way down to some very young small bulbs. This one particularly probably is a seedling, only a couple of years old. We've got a total of 62 bulbs I've counted out of that single clump, which just gives you an idea of just how compacted this growth was. And we're going to plant these now individually or in clumps, but with some space in between them, and we'll water these in the green, get this root planted out as quickly as we can over the next hour or so, and these should grow away beautifully and give us good flowering bulbs over the next couple of years. Well, we've come through now into the little area where we're going to plant a lot of these daffodils out. You see we've got lovely mixed planting in this area already, but there are some areas like this area where we can really thicken these bulbs up, and these congested clumps that we dug up yesterday and again today, these I've just dug up in the last hour. You'll see, looking at these bulb sizes in these overgrown congested clumps, you get a whole mixture. Some decent sized bulbs, but some little tiddlers as well. And we're going to show you a nice, easy, quick way of planting these, where you can plant them en masse, because when you've got a wheelbarrow like this load, probably around 200 to 300, planting those individually is going to be quite a job. So what we do with a spade is just oyster a hole open, and when you've got a nice gap like that, just to feed the bulbs through and push them down into the base. And you can see the depth that we're getting there. These are at least twice their own depth, ideally around 3 times their own depth. You want to get these down to between 5 and 6 inches ideally. And then just to plant these, just to hold the stems upright, firm behind and in front, and that should squeeze any air out. Doesn't look particularly pretty for the first year. You may well have these stalks that will lie sideways or at funny angles for the first year, and then if you don't want them coming up as lines, what I tend to do is just put the spade in at different angles, and that way you can create a nice effect when you look through these at a distance. They'll all look as if they've been planted quite naturalistically. There won't be any lines of these at all. There we go. 10 in less than 2 minutes. So I'm just going to continue my way with these. We're going to plant most of them into this area to thicken up this planting. We've got a really nice selection of both whites, creams and the traditional fall trumpet yellow here. We think most of these from the paddock that we have dug up are the traditional yellow trumpets, which will just fit in here very nicely. So we're just going to work our way around, filling in all the gaps so that this display is hopefully twice as good next and in subsequent years. And this is where we've completed the planting for this afternoon. We've got the whole barrow load out. So we've got whole new areas where there were absolutely no daffs growing before, and we've got lovely little clumps growing in here. And we've also extended the planting into this corner around the base where this big old birch tree went over about 3 or 4 years ago. So we've got a new planting on that end, and we've also, out of that barrow load, got a new area planted in this area just under this pear tree in front of where the snowdrops were flowering so nicely earlier in the season. So hopefully next year we'll be able to show you these in full bloom. We're not going to have to water these in today because digging in this area, this ground is really very moisture rich at the moment. In fact, waterlogged. You've got to be careful not to dig too deep, you reach the water table. So ideal planting conditions really. If it was at all dry, then the idea would be to water these, and we're now going to come in with some feed to get down, which will hopefully get these bulbs even firmer and bigger, ready for the flowering season next year.